Hello, everyone. This video is about the spiritual basis of Ayurveda, and I'd like to explain why I made it. About 10 years ago, I experienced a series of physical symptoms that left me feeling like I was on a downward spiral to a terrible, unknown disease. Although I didn't have a specific diagnosis, I felt terrified, lonely, and for the very first time, was confronted with the fear of death. I eventually made several changes to my habits, such as diet, exercise, and lifestyle, and got to a place of blooming health. The journey was long and required immense discipline. However, the most important thing I learned from this journey is not how to reprogram my habits to restore my health, but to learn to detach myself from how I was feeling about my health, how not to obsess about my physical symptoms. Today, as I work with clients, I see some of you try very, very hard to heal yourself from your symptoms and getting frustrated when your efforts don't yield relief. This video is for you. It is also for you who are curious about Ayurveda beyond just the mechanics of what to eat and what to do. It is for every one of you who is seeking purpose. Because the most important question is, what is the point of good health and a long life? And that's where Ayurveda begins. Let's dive in. Okay, so let's start by answering the question, what is the meaning of the word Ayurveda? Now, most people interpret the word Ayurveda to mean knowledge of life. However, Professor P. Ram Manohar offers a more nuanced and deeper interpretation of this word. Ayurveda is a composite of two words, Ayus and Veda. Ayus means lifespan. And by definition, lifespan implies a finite period of time. So it's quite interesting that the very word Ayurveda, which is supposed to help us live a long life, is actually saying that life is limited. Veda means knowledge. Knowledge of what? Here it is the complete knowledge of that which exists. Putting this together, Ayurveda is a knowledge system that teaches us how to adapt to live a long life. But for what reason do we seek to live a long life? As we all know, it is the condition of humanity to suffer. So no matter what we achieve, how much money we make, what relationships we have, no one is free of suffering. So what's the point of a long life? Unlike science, Ayurveda starts by answering this fundamental question. And the point is that it takes a finite amount of time, a significant amount of time for us to conceptualize, analyze, and experience what is true existence. And what is the meaning of true existence? To answer this question, we have to time travel back to a few thousand years ago to look at Vedic philosophy. The Vedas are a body of knowledge that originated in the Indian subcontinent about 3,000 years ago. Now, there is some doubt as to whether it was 3,000, 5,000, whatever it was a few thousand years ago. What we do know is that the Vedas are considered to be of divine or superhuman origin, and that only certain people, namely the rishis or the sages, could access this knowledge after intense meditation. So the Vedas started off with simple chants and progressively grew in sophistication to encompass art, politics, and philosophy. So the philosophical system is actually quite elaborate, and the roots of Ayurveda can be traced to one of these philosophical systems called Sankhya. Sankhya is the first philosophical system that provides a theory of what a human being is and what is existence. And today we attribute our knowledge of Ayurveda to 3 texts which are inspired by the Sankhya philosophy. And these texts are Charaka Samhita, Sushruta Samhita, and Ashtanga Hridayam. There have been several commentaries and bodies of texts that have evolved which comment on these 3 fundamental texts. And everything we know today about Ayurveda can be traced to these 3 foundational texts. Okay, so as I mentioned, Sankhya is the first body of knowledge that describes existence and what is a human being. So Sankhya, one of the meanings of the word Sankhya is number. And it's interesting that Sankhya describes existence in terms of a finite number of principles, 25 to be exact. So at a high level, a human being is seen as a composite of 2 bodies, a physical body and a subtle body. So this is very different from how biology sees a human being or any organism, where it's mainly focused on, the physical aspects, like even neurological aspects, cognitive aspects of the human body, we try to explain in terms of physical entities. But Sankhya sees a human being as 2 fundamental entities. Now, Sankhya begins by postulating that the human condition is fraught with suffering because we identify reality with the physical body and the physical world. So that's why it's a philosophy, because it begins with human suffering. And Sankhya says the reason why suffering is part and parcel of the human condition is because only the physical body dies when we die. The subtle body lives on, and we fail to understand this. So the only reality is pure consciousness, which is indestructible, unchangeable, and eternal. And the way to be free of suffering is when we truly experience this, which is true reality is nothing but pure consciousness. Now, there are 5 principles that make up the physical body, and many of you who are familiar with Ayurveda will recognize these: earth, water, fire, wind, and space. The subtle body is made of 18 elements. We won't go into the details here. And there are 2 foundational principles, the natural principle and consciousness principle, which basically interact to create the remaining 23 principles. And these 25 principles together is all that is needed to explain everything that exists according to Sankhya. So there's very rigorous logic and reasoning behind why this is so. Okay, so you may have heard that Ayurveda and yoga are sister sciences. Ayurveda is the study of the physical body and the physical existence, while yoga is the study of the subtle body. Yoga teaches us practices on how to still our senses and the mind, because only when the mind quietens down do we have a hope of experiencing pure consciousness. So indeed, they are sister sciences because they share the same mother, which is Sankhya. Now, let's expand this a little bit to talk about evolution. So many of you must have learned about Darwin's theory of evolution, but you may not be familiar with the Vedic theory of evolution. The key difference between the two theories is that, according to Darwin, evolution has no purpose. Vedic theory, on the other hand, argues that all evolution has a purpose. And what is the purpose? It is to become pure consciousness or spirit. So, what does this mean exactly? Now, there are many ways to classify things in the universe and many ways to classify living things, as we know from botany, zoology, physics, and other scientific disciplines. These classifications are typically based upon physical characteristics of the thing or the organism. Now, the Vedic system looks at things a little differently along the matter-spirit axis. So, for example, if we consider a bunch of pebbles, these are pure material objects and lack any consciousness. Consciousness is nothing but awareness of internal and external stimuli that typically elicits some response from an organism. Now, a purely inanimate object like a pebble does not respond to any stimuli, and therefore we say it lacks consciousness. Now, when we go to a plant, plants do respond to some stimuli. Animals have a more sophisticated response system, and humans have the most sophisticated consciousness because we can describe our experiences in great detail using language. We can control our response to stimuli, etc. So the purpose of evolution is to evolve along this axis of consciousness, to achieve higher and higher levels of consciousness. Now, is there anything beyond the human consciousness? And indeed there is. And this is what the ancient seers and sages were considered to be. Those that experienced this eternal universal consciousness were considered to be the ultimate evolved beings. And so this is the purpose of evolution, according to Vedic theory. Now, where does Ayurveda fit in? So the basic tenets of Ayurveda is that all human suffering and disease, and here when I say disease, we mainly refer to chronic disease, not communicable diseases, which are caused by like bacteria and viruses and so on. So all suffering and disease are caused by improper conduct, how we behave and act, and lapses in judgment, bad decisions. Ayurveda sees the human being as an integral, conscious physical entity. There's no separation between the mind stuff and the physical stuff. And health actually starts with the subtle body because that is what outlives the physical body. Thus, the focus of Ayurveda is on purifying the mind, make it more sattvic. The qualities of sat are peace, happiness, clarity, and empathy. Ayurveda gives us tools to overcome other qualities like tamas and rajas. So tamas basically includes negative emotions like laziness, apathy, depression, and so on. And rajas describes qualities like ambition, excessive indulgence of our senses, having, very poignant experiences, greed, and so on. And basically gives us tools to prepare our minds for yoga by systematic practices to purify the mind. So what are these tools that Ayurveda gives us? And many of you might be familiar with Dinacharya or daily routines. So if you Google Ayurveda, online, what typically comes up is daily routines, seasonal routines, etc. But if you look at the deeper meaning of what is the purpose of Dinacharya, it is basically to take care of our senses so that we are always conscious to use them correctly. Now, Ayurveda also elaborates on a code of conduct on how we should live. And this is called Sadvritta. So living by these codes of conduct and practicing Dinacharya mindfully helps us prepare the mind to become quiet. So let's elaborate a little bit about the elements of Dinacharya. Dinacharya starts with introspection. So we should wake up at dawn, and the first thing to do is to ponder on how to spend the day. Am I walking the path of righteousness? Followed by meditation, and only then get into the series of routines on taking care of our sense organs. So you might have heard of nasya, which is, you know, dropping a few drops of oil in our nostrils, taking care of our ears, a daily oil massage, etc. Now, Sadvritta is a series of very elaborate codes of conduct on how we control our mind, how we control our senses, and how we live a moral and ethical life. There are also very intricate codes of conduct on how we work, how we interact with people in society, how we groom ourselves, etc. There are also a series of very elaborate rules on how we should take care of our diet, what food to eat, how to eat, etc. And so in the rest of these videos, I'm going to be focusing on the dietetics aspect, so that we get mindful about how we eat and take care of our health. Now, I hope this is helpful. So the main point for starting with this video was to set this context on setting some boundaries and being detached from our physical bodies. So I hope this helps you relax a little bit, and to think about what the deeper purpose of a well-lived life is. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.